Hello everybody. I'm DeWitt Town Councilor Karen Doctor, and I am not going to speak to the maps per se. I am going to speak to process. I'm an attorney when I'm not being DeWitt Town Councilor, and process is very, very crucial to what we are doing or attempting to do here. Number one, I'm very glad that I was able to come and I was able to move some court appearances so I could be here. Gee, 10 o'clock during the day for those people who do not have flexibility to be able to do what I did is indeed a travesty. As for process for that, coming in the evenings, coming on weekends, all of those things would have made it a lot more palatable and easier for more and interested voices from both sides of the aisle to be heard. Number one. Number two, speaking of process, what the heck is the rush? These maps are not to be, they are covering the year that is for 2023. I can calculate how old I will be in 2023, and I'm sure the rest of you can as well. We need to be able to have that time to age in place and digest what is going on at the legislature. And as an attorney, I like to speak, as I have said, to process. Because we can all flap our hands and yell and scream, but what is it that needs to be done? As we have said, we need more time. As so many of the speakers have said, we need to have transparency and a chance to digest the maps that only showed up in some of our emails a few days ago. And speaking of a few days ago, on October 27th, Governor Hochul signed a legislative act, S.B.A.229c. What is that all about? Easy. That piece of legislation, quote, requires county districting to follow specific guidelines requiring districts to be drawn to be nearly equal in population, contiguous, and not to favor incumbents or parties. I strongly suggest to the legislature, and also this business about having the thing done by noon. I know work can contract to fill the time allotted, but not this kind of work. And with this legislative mandate now in place, it is very, very important that all of us take the time, that all of us have a chance to digest what is going on, and most important of all, that the legislation that has been signed into law be utilized sooner rather than later. And having to make a decision by the day after Election Day is absolutely appalling. All of us are affected, and all of us need to take time. And I am presenting that to Chairman Knapp for him to be able to cogitate on what I am saying, and hopefully the, quote, deadline, close quote, of noon today, it's, as they used to say, as they said in Pirates of the Caribbean, it's not a rule, it's not part of the Pirates Code, it's more a set of guidelines anyway. And that is something that the legislature needs to consider. Thank you.
No. apologize. I have a little trouble with the handwriting. Michael Riley? There you go. Thank you.
Morning, my name is Michael Reilly. I've been a town of DeWitt resident my entire life. I live in a little place called Collimer, which was Britain's settlement back in the 1800s. I found out about this meeting by speaking with a neighbor last night. I saw one little blurb on the news. My only real comment is that it's too short, and I don't care what your political affiliation is. I don't care your process or any. Your process is important. Not enough time has been allotted, and I would, up until today, I thought that Onondaga County was not doing what the rest of the country is apparently doing.
Can you speak up?
Up until today, I believed that Onondaga County or our local government wasn't doing what the rest of the country is doing, where everything is political no matter what the situation is. And I really had hoped that this process would listen to the people that are voting. Give the people that vote a chance to do what the people vote need to do. Give us time to make informed decisions. Listen. Somebody spoke early about that, and I have two daughters that are both educators. There's a difference between listening and hearing. In order to hear, you have to stop talking. Stop telling me what I should know. Stop telling me what I should do. Listen to me, listen to my fellow neighbors and everybody else. Thank you.
Robert Sorensen.
My name is Robert Saracen. I live in DeWitt, where my county legislator is David Knapp, chairman of the county legislature. Since there is a possibility of a lawsuit regarding the procedure and the final product of the reapportionment process, or the alleged reapportionment process, I have a few questions for Attorney Kevin Huslander, who is both the campaign attorney for Ryan McMahon and chair of this reapportionment committee. Since he wears both hats, I have the following questions. Since you wear both hats as campaign attorney for the county executive and chair of the reapportionment commission, will you cooperate and provide all payments the county executive has provided you in the past 2 years? Since you wear both hats as campaign attorney and chair of the reapportionment commission, do you accept the fact that you cannot claim attorney-client privilege for your discussions with the county executive regarding reapportionment? Even if you have done all of your work pro bono, do you accept the fact that ethical rules prevent you from handling the litigation for the commission, since you cannot be both a lawyer and witness in the same case? For the same reason, do you accept the fact that your firm will also not be able to handle the litigation for this commission? After reviewing the alleged process of the reapportionment commission, where I predict an extremely short victory on the procedure in a microscopic way, with a final product of a lousy substantial result, I want to use two analogies that are relevant. First, the election of 2019, where almost all the Republicans made a pledge for a nonpartisan independent commission to do the reapportionment process before the election. This pledge was a short-term victory for democracy, since the pledge was immediately broken after the election. Second, building the aquarium. Please note the estimated cost is $85 million, which doesn't cover the overruns, which is inevitable in a project of this magnitude. The project alleges that a multitude of people will come to an aquarium from 200 to 300 miles away, the same allegation used by Destiny, which proved so financially unsuccessful that it is underwater. in the language of finance and real estate. The project was put on a timeline of a speeding bullet. After the Republicans realized the negative consequences of this project at the ballot box, they put a temporary hold on this project before the election day, though it should be noted that it remains in the contingency budget. Once again, a very short-term victory for democracy, since unless the legislature project is successful, you can count on the Republicans to give the green light to the aquarium shortly after the election. We now get to the Reapportionment Commission procedure and project. The bare procedural equities, assuming you did not have an independent, nonpartisan redistrict commission, should include the following. 1, wide distribution of the number of previous numbers in each legislative district, town, and election district, and the current numbers in each legislative district, towns, villages, and election districts. 2, statement of the redistricting principles of the commission or statements of the redistricting principles by groups or individual commission members. 3, public hearings at accessible hours on these principles and public input in the legislative districts before the commissions. 4, wide distribution of the proposed legislative districting by the commission or groups or individual commission members. 5, public hearings giving adequate time for the public to digest the data and boundaries at accessible and discussions of these proposed legislative districts. 6, revise the mission of the legislative redistricting by the commission or groups of individual commission members. Once again, the whole process was put on the timeline of a speeding bullet. Since there will be negative consequences of the procedure and substance of this project, I predict there will be some sort of lengthening of the procedure, minute, of the redistricting process. It will be a short-term victory for democracy, but you can count on the Republicans to give the green light to the proposed redistricting maps of the Republicans. A few items that seems to be lost in the hearings is that the public does not get much time to understand the proposed districts, and further, there is no opportunity for discussions. These hearings also propose that I have chosen one of the 2 proposed maps. Well, I prefer the map drawn by number 1, one reason being that the number 2 map smashes DeWitt even more into further smithereens, or cannot assume that I wouldn't have time to object to map number 1. If I had more time to study the proposed districts, there would be further opportunity for discussion. There should be no assumption that Democrats are monolithic in their views, no assumption that Republicans are monolithic in their views, and no assumption that independents are monolithic in their views. While I'm not a scholar of Yiddish, one traditional definition of the word chutzpah is the orphan pleading for mercy after killing both of his parents. The procedure and substance of redistricting now equals the traditional definition of chutzpah. Thank you.
Ray Garbowsky.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ray Garbowsky, a lifetime resident of Onondaga County, and currently live in the DeWitt area. Is the Legislative District 5, which encompasses a portion of North Syracuse, Salina, Cicero Clay, and a small portion of DeWitt. Looking at the map, it looks like a convoluted puzzle piece, and also known as the lobster claw, as I've heard. Why is my town, DeWitt, broken up into 4 legislative districts? Difficult to understand how the single legislator can represent all these communities with varying issues. This makes absolutely no sense to me. Also, I'm very frustrated to see that Mr. Knapp's comments, that he has said that he is not expecting any monumental changes. Once again, have you seen District 5 in this broken up situation that we've already been presented? Even with the new maps, it is into 4 segments of an area that still divides the group up and still not sure how we can all be together as a legislative group. Additional concerns are expressed by many citizens in the Onondaga County region and area. County legislators pledged a fair and open process and increased public participation and access. Here we are today. I guess this is it. GOP-led legislature said they intended to improve the process by barring partisan and elected officials from sitting on the committee. So, how is Mr. Knapp sitting on this committee? Plus, why is this being done during an election? Early voting is already going on, and now every single county legislator is up for re-election. Wait for this to end, the voting to finish, and slow the process down.
Yes.
Voters may have many priorities, and redistricting is absolutely one of them. If you think they don't care, you are absolutely wrong. My understanding is the new district maps have until 2023, as we've heard, and the election is to be in place. We have tons of time. New hearings should be scheduled after the maps are released so they can be reviewed and then critiqued. Listen to the community feedback and explain how these new maps have been developed, because I sure don't know how. This happens once every 10 years. Let's get to the right time and take out the partisanship. It's wrong, and your duty is to represent the people in a nonpartisan manner. Also, I had heard previously that Governor Hochul has a bill that will also impact the outcome of this potentially as well. Finally, the hearings and the maps should be scheduled when the majority of people can partake in these meetings. After all, people do work. I thank you for your time, and I need to leave right now to go to work to educate a few young individuals that hopefully will help us out into the future. Thank you.
Mark Briggs.
Good morning. I'm Mark Briggs. I live in the township of DeWitt. I've gotten quite an education here. I've enjoyed seeing how people have looked at the small, tiny little macro bits of this legislation and how it affects us locally. Because when I went at this, I was looking at the macro. And I wrote a letter about it. It would be impossible for me to prove that gerrymandering is wrong, and I don't have to, because you know it. In the past, both of the major parties have indulged themselves in this immoral practice. Now our country is in an existential crisis. This means we're determining if we're going to exist. And if we wish to exist, we can no longer indulge ourselves in this anti-democracy practice. For 5 or more years, our country's been engaged in the latest, sometimes very uncivil conversation about whether to have another civil war. I intend no hyperbole here. The success of our democracy depends on our citizens trusting that they elected their public officials through free, accessible, and fair elections. At a certain tipping point, abused people think I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Civil unrest breaks out when people feel abused with no peaceful opportunity for redress of grievances. Mentioning Hitler in connection with modern American politics gets people booed off the stage, so I won't do it. I'll just mention the historical fact that Germany went from being